I want to have faith, but I don't have faith. And she said, well, the good news, Peter, is faith's not a feeling. It's a choice.
Right.
What do I have because I have Jesus? I've got new mercy every day. I've got grace. I've got a God fighting my battles. I have those and I can never lose them. I have this guitar in my hands and I look down and I can see the joint on the neck right where it's glued together. And God tells me, like, this is you. You got this. I'm holding you together.
Sometimes the parts of our story that we think disqualify our stories from being of any good use to God are actually the parts where the light's going to break through. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Matthew West Podcast. I'm your host, Matthew West, and as always, I really hope you like it. Welcome to the Story House. In case you're watching, did you know you can actually watch my podcast? So go to the Matthew West Podcast on YouTube if you want to watch it. Otherwise, you can listen to it wherever you listen to podcasts. But thank you. I know you guys are out there listening every week. To those of you who are diehards, you're amazing, and I love you. Thank you so much. And, this is the studio where I write my songs and my books, but it's also where we record the podcast each and every week. I'm excited about today's guest, but before we get to that, Easter season is upon us, and my prayer for you is that this Easter season will be a special one for you, that you'll find yourself taking some time in your own life, just in remembrance and thinking about what Easter means. The death, the burial, and the resurrection. We serve a risen Savior. For God so loved the world that he sent his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. So I just want to encourage you to spend some time. Don't let this Easter season go by. And it's all just about Easter egg hunts or whatever. Like, let's get to the point, the main point of it all. Let it really wash over us once and for all, that Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain. He washed it white as snow. Can I get an amen? All right, let's get into today's show. My guest today is an up-and-coming artist who just released an awesome new song. I've gotten to begin working with this guy over the last several months. He's got a powerful testimony to tell, and we're going to get to know him. You're going to get to know more about his music. So without further ado, let's go to the Story House with my friend Peter Burton. You're coming fresh off of a photo shoot.
Of a photo shoot.
How did it go, Peter Burton?
It was...
Did you smile pretty for the cameras?
I smiled very pretty for the cameras. I just realized that we're already rolling, and I didn't even know that yet.
Yeah, that's the magic of podcasting. But
fresh off a photo shoot, which was a first-time experience for me.
Because you live in another state other than Tennessee, we're going to get to that. But so
yes.
when you come to town,
yep.
we fill your week with...
crazy amounts of
with
things.
A lot of stuff. You got to do podcasts and songwriting and recording and photo shoots because you live in a faraway land filled with darkness and evil. No, I'm just kidding. A land called California.
California
is where you were born and raised?
Yep.
What part of California?
In this town, it's like 40 minutes east of Sacramento, called Auburn, California.
Auburn, California.
I grew up on not the typical California vibes you would maybe think of. I grew up on 10 acres. This was farmland-ish, but not city, not full-on farmland. But I was this town was the smaller one of the ones that were in the area. Because now I'm in the suburb still east of Sacramento called Roseville. There's a little more going on there.
Okay. So you born and raised, stayed there
till I was 20 years old.
Okay.
And then from that point on, I was doing music, and I joined a band, and I went on the road, and I deferred college, and that was when I kind of got out of Auburn and Roseville for the first time.
Well, you never moved and did LA or anything
never
like that.
Did
you always stayed in Northern California.
Nope.
Is that's Northern California, right?
Yeah, Northern Cal. Yeah, NorCal.
But the trip from Sacramento to Nashville is not a long. That's a long flight.
Oh, it's a long flight.
Right.
But we have a direct flight now. For the longest time, we didn't. You would have a full day of travel. You're going to have to lay over in Denver or Phoenix or somewhere. Now.
Is it 5 hours?
It's 4 hours.
4 hour nonstop?
4 hours and 20 minutes.
That's incredible.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah, I've been to that area many times. It's really nice there. I like it. Are you a Sacramento Kings fan?
Absolutely.
That's like a big, for years,
Light
that was
the beam,
a point of
baby.
embarrassment, but now it's like kind of a thing.
Whoa. Not like that embarrassing.
But I mean, like they've always been kind of the redheaded stepchild of the
Lakers or the Warriors?
Yeah. Right?
No, because back in the day, when we had Chris Webber and Mike Bibby and all those guys, we were the best team in the NBA.
Did they ever win championships?
Yeah.
The Kings?
The Kings? You guys, you remember the big Laker Kings rival with
I don't.
Kobe Bryant and okay. So
I remember
anyway,
Kobe Bryant, but I remember the Kings. I feel like the
you don't
Kings have
remember
always
Chris
been bad.
Webber?
Yeah, of course, Chris.
Okay, Mike Bibby, Bobby Jackson. Fun story. I taught Bobby Jackson's daughter's guitar lessons. A lot of the Kings players are in the suburbs around. So but I love
go to your
basketball.
church.
Yeah, they would go to our church and different things, or they'd be at like the local basketball places around.
But now, being a Kings fan,
the Kings
is
fan, it's cool. It was done. It was kind of it was
Had some down
embarrassing
years.
for a while.
Yeah.
And then the Warriors had their glory days with Steph Curry and all that. But then we got our kind of the whole thing revamped, and we got a new arena downtown. We have this really cool area called
And they
Doco,
light the beam.
And they light the beam.
What's
It's
the beam? What does
it's
that
this
mean?
Giant purple beam, which is the color of the Kings, right? That shoots up into the sky. So when we win,
They light
the beam, and you can see it from everywhere.
And the fans get
And
excited.
the fans go crazy.
Isn't
So
that
it's like,
funny?
light the beam,
We need to do that when you have your first number one song.
Yeah, it's
we'll
just like a giant, it's like
The
a
Burton
bat
beam.
signal. The Burton beam.
So have you so you grew up in that area,
Yeah.
and did you go to college somewhere?
I did, but not traditional, went to a college for 4 years. I went to a junior college for 2 years in the Sacramento area, and
Okay.
then I did the rest online at Liberty University.
Okay, and did you meet your wife
I met my wife at church
at church at Bayside?
at Bayside in
Okay.
our college ministry. Well, it was like our young adults
Did you
ministry.
grow up at Bayside Church?
No.
Okay, so you started attending Bayside Church.
Yeah.
Now, Bayside Church, for those who don't know, is this massive church in the Sacramento area that has
Yeah.
multiple campuses.
Yep. We
One of-
actually go all the way down to OC now.
Okay.
All the way down to California. So we're all over the place.
Lincoln Brewster came
Lincoln
out
Brewster.
of that church.
Yeah.
Who's a kind of a
Yeah.
legendary
Yeah.
guitar player, worship leader.
Good buddy of mine. We actually still live 5 minutes from each other. And
Okay.
I was writing songs with him 2 weeks ago.
And how did you get involved with? You began your music career at Bayside
Yeah.
as a worship leader?
Well,
or-
no, I was actually at a church up in Auburn where I lived. So my music career started when right out of high school, there was a local band that I was a big fan of. They were going to go on tour and they needed a bass player. I didn't play bass at the time. I was a guitar player, but I was like, hey, 4 strings instead of 6. I can figure this out.
Yeah.
No offense, bass players.
Yeah.
But I'm like a bass player, if you would. So then I learned the instrument, I learned their songs, jumped on the road with them for 6 months, toured the country in a van and a trailer.
Nice.
And that was a pretty terrifying
That's brutal.
experience.
Yeah.
To say the
Everybody's
least.
gotta do it.
I decided after that I didn't want to maybe pursue music for a career. So I went back and I worked at coffee shops, and then but I still I just loved music because from when I was 10 years old, I learned guitar, and I just grew up being in worship teams in the church. And after I left touring in that band, I kind of was going to hang it up. And then I started leading worship at a local church in Auburn, just a small church for a small high school group. And I just was doing it because I loved it. There's something about getting to play music in front of people in a way that goes beyond just the music itself. There's purpose in it. And so that was my draw. I was spending just volunteering my time for 100 high school students every week. And then that was kind of where God started to kind of mend and mold my heart to go, hey, maybe this is something I want you more involved in. But for that time, I was like, I'm going to keep working at coffee shops. That was when I was at junior college for those 2 years and just volunteering. And then one day the pastor asked me, hey, would you like to come on staff? I was like, be paid to do what I'm already volunteering to do. That's kind of interesting. So that was when my kind of world opened to maybe ministry as a vocational thing could be something I would want to do. Because if you asked me in high school if I'd ever want to do that, I'd be like, no, absolutely not.
Did you grow up in a Christian home?
I did, yeah. Amazing family. My mom and dad are my heroes.
When did you become a Christian?
Well, I became a Christian. I actually vividly remember saying like the Lord's, the sinner's prayer when I was like, you know how when you're really little, there's these core memories that they're just there. Like there is this moment where I was on my bed. My siblings led me to Christ, actually.
Cool.
Really cool.
Older siblings? Or?
Yeah, I'm the youngest of 4. So, and I was an accident, but my mom says a pleasant surprise.
No such thing. No such thing as accident.
Yeah. So when I was little, I grew up in the church. I was always around the church. And so, I knew Jesus from a young age, but, my family is also very involved in an organization called Young Life, which my grandpa, who passed away recently, he was a massive
Didn't he like start it or something?
No, he was the interim president for a season, and he helped get people to donate millions and millions of dollars to help the organization run. He was an amazing human who loved the Lord and basically he was very successful early on in life, and so he didn't really need to work the rest of his life, so he committed his life to ministry, and he just served Young Life because he loved seeing high schoolers and youth far from God come to Jesus at these camps that they would put on. So naturally, I got to go to all these awesome Young Life camps and events through my youth years and in high school.
Cool.
Because of that. And that was where my relationship with Jesus really found its foundation, is like I had, that moment in basically my early high school years was like, is my faith going to be my parents and my family's, or is this something I actually believe in?
Yeah.
Because, I can't fake this anymore. And I remember basically being like, hey, I genuinely have encountered, the Holy Spirit and God, and I believe in him. I believe in Jesus, but now I want the desire to want to follow you, Jesus. So like, help me have that. And I saw God just start to kind of develop that in my life.
That's cool.
Mostly in my high school years. So
I love that Young Life connection too. That's really cool. Like seeing young people following Jesus can really plant those seeds in an even younger person as well.
Totally.
So you get this job leading worship at a church.
Yeah.
And did that spark something in you? Like what is it that you fell in love with? Because all these years later, you're still leading worship full time as a worship pastor.
Yeah.
Like that was something that felt like a sweet spot for you. But what made you feel like you came alive getting to lead people into worship?
Yeah, I think, for me, I'm always going, I'm a very deep thinker in general. I like to just go far into things. And I've always gone like, what's the purpose behind what I'm doing with my life? I've just always kind of had that thought. And so when I decide to do something, I'm always looking into the deeper part of it. And so for music, when I went and played with a band and did all the things, was, yes, it was Christian music, but there was still kind of this surface level ego thing about it for me. I think that God was kind of like, I need to iron this out of that a bit. And then when I gave it up and I came back to just lead worship in this spot where it was like, there was not a lot in it for me. I'm stepping on way smaller stages in front of like a few students, and I start playing music and I start seeing God use the atmosphere to help people draw closer to him. There's this deeper purpose for music that I could see the giftings come together. And it was at that moment where I went like, this is something I feel like I want to be involved in, because I feel like there's actual life change happening, not because of me, but because of what God's doing in the room through people worshiping him. And if I can be a vessel and an avenue that can help people do that, then that gives me a lot of purpose in life, right?
I love that.
And so for worship leading specifically, it was finding that moment where I saw young people connect with God. And then I thought about my own life, like what kept me grounded from a young age to my college years. What kept me in the church was music. I mean, I'm a broken human. I had a lot of prodigal years, and what kept me tied to wanting to come to church was music. So music is this beautiful thing, right? It's this thing that's therapeutic, it's healing, it's this amazing gift, but music just by itself isn't there's something else that needs to go with it.
Yeah.
And it's because it's designed to be used to give glory to, the creator of it. And I think once I finally paired those things together, I got the band touring thing out of my system. And then I kind of wiped the slate clean. God went, okay, now maybe you're ready to see what I want to do in this area.
Guys, my friends at Simply Earth have started a company that makes it easy to create your own candles, soaps, and more, even for beginners like me. With the Simply Earth recipe box, you can make your own DIY natural products. Emphasis on the word natural, meaning good for you. And yes, I hope to show you some of me making some of these products myself soon. Why try it? Each box delivers pure natural ingredients and simple recipe cards right to your door. So start making natural DIY products while listening to the Matthew West podcast, of course, each week. Now, they tell me they have over 6,000 5-star reviews, and each month brings a new theme to explore. Plus, check this out. This company, Simply Earth, donates 13% of their profits to help end human trafficking. How amazing is that? So do your part to help end human trafficking and sign up for Simply Earth. Are you ready to get started? Go to simplyearth.com and use code WEST to get a free car diffuser with your subscription. Don't wait. These guys are awesome. You're going to love it. Join the Simply Earth community today. Help end human trafficking. Go to simplyearth.com to get started. So last year, somebody sent me some songs from from somebody I didn't know, from Peter Burton. I had never heard your name, and I started listening, and right away I was like, it was awesome. I loved the voice. I loved the songs. I loved what they said. And I wanted to like just call and encourage you because I didn't know what you were up to, but I was like, hey man, these are awesome songs. And then when I started to hear kind of your history, it was so interesting to me to hear everybody's got an origin story, in music and in life.
Sure.
And for your origin story to be as a worship leader, and then I mentioned Lincoln Brewster moments ago, but he was an instrumental, no pun intended, part of your development as an artist as well.
Yeah.
So Lincoln kind of took you under his wing as he was touring around the world. So you're back and you're leading worship at a church, and Lincoln, you kind of left the van and trailer and the tour with that band behind, and then all of a sudden you're on a different kind of tour, and it's on a different level because Lincoln Brewster's touring around the country in a tour bus and things like that. Talk about like that season and what it was that Lincoln saw in you, and he plucked you out and said, come on the road with me.
Sure. I'm still wondering why he did that to this day. But in all seriousness, it was crazy going from, so I was leading worship at that small church, and Lincoln was leading worship at this big church now, Bayside, that I'm a part of now, 30 minutes away. And as I grew in loving worship and leading worship, I wanted to just be around people who were doing it more and more. And this was at the season where Lincoln was at a big spot in his career. And so I would just go down to the church to watch him play. And then I started to meet people at the college ministry at that church. And I met a ton of musicians, a ton of awesome people, because naturally that hub in Bayside in and of itself kind of drew a lot of awesome creatives to it. So I ended up getting plugged into that church, and then ended up getting a job as a worship leader at that church. And then while I was a worship leader at that church, funny enough, Lincoln, his bass player was moving on to do something else, and he needed a bass player. And he found out that I played bass in that band back in the day. So it was like God was setting that up.
So you couldn't escape playing bass.
Couldn't escape it.
So he hired you to play bass?
Yeah. But the funny story is that he hired me to play bass, and then a week later I told him I don't want to play bass for you because I don't want to be a bass player. And then we had this is just Link. He's just a great pastor in and of himself. He was like, hey, I didn't bring you on the road because I want you to be my bass player. Because the guy who was playing bass before me was like Norm Stockton. He was like, hey, I think he went and played with Toto after Lincoln or something. Like
virtuoso.
But he said, Lincoln was like, no, I'm not doing that. He's like, you can play my songs, but I want to take you along so I can show you what it's like to lead worship in different environments, so I can get you around people who are doing what I know you want to do and teach you. And he was a developer. And so I owe a lot of just development, in my musical career to him.
How long were you on the road with him?
10 years. Yeah.
And you started writing songs during that period of time?
Yeah, so that's where I started writing songs with him and some of my other buddies at the church that were worship leaders. And so then
you were on the road with him for 10 years?
Yeah.
While you were full-time at the church too? So you'd come off the road as sort of artist in residence?
Yeah, so our church and him were, partnered in the fact that a lot of the worship people that were on staff at the church, some of them were in the band with Link, and we had enough people around to where when we went out on the road, there was plenty of other people to fill in, and then we would swap around. But I was like always going out with him.
And that's an unbelievable experience to have that amount of touring under your belt before you even enter into a solo artist career.
Totally.
So your church had a conference called Thrive, is that right?
Yeah.
Because I know, I'm familiar with Thrive Worship. That's something you and Lincoln started, or?
There's something that Lincoln and me and a guy named Corbin, a girl named Charmaine, and Taylor, basically the worship leaders at our church, came together at that conference every year, and we would play, because we have different campuses, but that would be where we would get to play together. And it would just be this awesome, fun, kind of joyous atmosphere where we're like, hey, all the worship leaders in one spot, very united, very cool thing. And that was where Thrive Worship developed, and we took the name from the conference because it just fit kind of what we were doing, and it made sense. So that was kind of like Lincoln helped develop all of us, and then we started writing songs. We were writing songs for Lincoln, we were writing songs for the church, and then our songs started doing some really cool things in our church, and that's when Lincoln was like, hey, we should see if we want to take this outside the walls of the church. And that's how we developed as Thrive Worship. And so then I helped lead that alongside a bunch of other people for a few years.
And all the while you were writing songs that for Thrive and for the church, but then kind of storing these songs that you were writing as well that were not technically like songs you would sing in the church.
Yeah. I mean, basically what at that season of my life, like I had just gotten married to my wife, Allie, who is the love of my life. She's amazing.
You have 2 little girls, right?
I have 2 little girls.
So we have that in common.
Yep. Savannah and Summer. And so Savannah's 3, Summer is 6 months.
Amazing.
And my wife is hanging out with them at home now.
Don't blink, because I am much farther ahead, and it's a very sad time.
I miss them right now.
So married with 2 kids, but you started writing these songs that were...
Yeah, so at that time I had like just gotten married. I was writing songs. I was on the road. I was doing Thrive Worship. I was leading worship at the church. I had all these avenues that I was in, and then I was also... had these songs that I was writing from kind of my own personal point of view. And at that point in my life, I was starting to write songs, do all these things. I started to feel like, a big part of my personal story needed to come out in songs. So a big part of my personal testimony is that I've grown up struggling with mental health in a really a pretty extreme way for most of my life. And my parents kind of discovered it when I was young. I had a lot of struggles with anxiety and different things. And as I got into, it's stabled out for most of my life. But then when I got into my more adult years and I was trying to do all these things is when it really flared up. And I had like massive mental breakdown where I was having panic attacks, dealing with all this stuff. And, it was a crazy, crazy season.
Was anything going particularly wrong in your life at the time?
No.
Or was it just...
That's the thing, is like my whole world mentally was crashing down while I was working with people I'd always dreamed of working with, writing awesome music, leading worship in the church.
Yeah, so
I was getting up and singing about how amazing Jesus was, and then getting in my car and bawling my eyes out because I could barely breathe from a panic attack, And so... what happened in that season was, I started to go into these writing sessions, and I would be trying to write these congregational worship songs, but then I was also writing these songs that were just kind of what God was doing in my life. And so I just kind of started to put those into a folder a little bit, and go like, hey, I don't know if this is going to be used in the church right now, but I just started to go, I'm going to hang on to this. And then also just to kind of like, sum up my whole issue with mental health. Like basically in that season, I got to a point where before I got into all the artists and everything I'm in right now, I got to a point where my faith began to really be like, Satan was doing what he could do. I felt like all the things were moving forward, and Satan was like, I'm just going to come after this guy's mind as hard as I can to try and tank him. And there were some days where he won some big battles. But I'll never forget, I was on this walk one day, and I was struggling. I got into therapy. I got, a lot of help. And I started to see God, help transform my mind in the way that I started to get healthy. But there was this moment where I started to go, God, I've been doing all these things for you. I've been writing songs for you. I've been leading worship in church for you. I've been doing all these things. And I just feel like you're not helping bring peace to the anxiety that I struggle with. And I felt my faith begin to kind of go like, do I really believe that a God who loves me would allow me to go through what I'm going through? Because it was like debilitating at times. And I thought it was going to like, my wife had to put up with some crazy stuff, dude. And I was on this walk one day, and I was really questioning my faith. Am I going to stop all this? Am I going to stop writing songs, doing all this stuff? Am I going to just throw in the towel? And I called my mom, who's my prayer warrior. And I said, Mom, and she'd been with me through all my mental struggles my whole life, right? And I said, I don't know if I have faith to keep doing this in the way I'm doing it. Like, I don't know if I want to have faith, because I feel like the only way I can get through the mental battles in my mind is if there's a higher power and a God who can save me from it. But if that doesn't exist, I don't know how I'll make it. Yeah. And I said this line to her. I said, I want to have faith, but I don't have faith. And she said, well, the good news, Peter, is faith's not a feeling. It's a choice.
Right.
And in that moment, it was like kind of earth shattering for me, because I recognized, okay, cool, that I can work with that, because I want to believe that God is good and that he exists and that he's going to pull me through this. I just don't feel it at all right now, but I can choose to believe that. And what happened was, when I chose to believe it, even though I didn't feel it, then God started to drastically move. I started to, this craziest things, like I met this therapist from this person through this person who helped walk through this thing with me that led to all these breakthrough moments, and God just started boom, 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 we're going to battle this thing. And then all along though, Satan was coming after me, but I decided to fight. And then my faith began to get way stronger than it was before I had anything. And so then I started writing songs, doing music, and I started to see that there was going to be this story of my battle with mental health and God bringing me through it, that he was going to want to maybe use to help some other people. And so that's a big part of my testimony today.
It's interesting though, like the first song that I heard that you had written is a song you put out independently, but it was a song called Good Time to Praise.
Yeah.
And it's this like joyful, like any time is a good time to praise the Lord. And it's like knowing the context, like knowing your story, it's almost like this guy was writing this, choosing to believe this and choosing to pursue joy, even though he might have been really struggling and battling. Like, so to hear that origin story is pretty cool.
And what's cool about that song, and that song is really big in my life personally, I wrote that song with a couple of my buddies from the church, and the song is about gratitude ultimately.
Right.
And gratitude is the thing that saved my life, because when you're struggling, and anyone who's listening to this podcast right now, if you struggle with mental health in any capacity, whether it's, depression, OCD, but like whatever, anxiety, panic attacks, all the different things, name it whatever you want, mental health struggles, one of the best ways to come after them is the simple practice of counting your blessings. I know it sounds so like almost lame, but here's a cool fact. You can't, you as a human, your brain cannot feel grateful and anxiety at the same moment. it has to choose one. Like physically, your brain can't experience both at once. You can either feel gratitude, it basically cuts off anxiety. So if you can come after whatever you're going through or whatever you fear you're going to go through with counting your blessings, what counting your blessings does is it starts to build gratitude. So I would wake up every day and I would go, I'm breathing today. Some people are struggling to breathe today. Oh, I got to get out of bed and I put my 2 feet on the ground. Dang, I've got 2 feet to put on the ground. I get to go get myself a cup of coffee from the kitchen. Well, I have finances. I have enough money to do that. Wow, I get to look at my beautiful wife. I get to, hug my babies. Like, you just start small and you start to build. And before you know it, you're so thankful for the things you have that gratitude has now actually physically cut the anxiety line. And then the physical anxiety, the reaction that you would have in your body starts to calm itself down like your nervous system does. And so there's this big, they did this study that basically gratitude is the single healthiest human emotion you can experience. So a good time to praise is a song that says, when I think about the things I have, the food on my plate, the breath in my lungs, like I can't help but praise the Lord. So no matter what I'm going through, it's always a good time to praise God. And so that's where that but that has lived in me, in my DNA. And it's a big part of the story of even this song that I have out now is actually like the bigger part of my story, right? Because it talks about, my song out right now is called Where Would I Be? And it's almost a scary thought to think of, right? When you ask yourself, hey, Matthew, where would you be right now if Jesus wasn't in your life right now?
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of freaky, right?
You don't,
Well,
but the answer is,
thank God you'll never know.
Yeah.
Right?
So this new song, Where Would I Be, just came out last week, and it's your first official. So just to fill people in, like, people know, I think people listen to the podcast know that we have a management company and that I have a passion to help champion other artists and writers who want to tell people about Jesus and share their story.
Sure.
So, from us getting to meet to us getting to work together and watching you go sign your name on a record contract and getting to work together like that.
Crazy.
Now to, having a photo shoot and doing all the things, and your biggest dream come true, being a guest on the Matthew West podcast. But
biggest ever.
Last week you released a brand new song and it is so sick. It's awesome.
Man,
Where would I be? And I think that's a question. It's going to resonate with so many people because anybody who's had their life changed by Jesus
totally
can think on those terms, and it's going to resonate because it's like, where would I be? It's like, thank God I don't have to know.
Yeah. Like,
he lifted me up out of that grave, out of that pit, out of that addiction, out of that anxiety, out of that mental health, whatever, right? So I love this song so much. And I can't wait for people to hear it. But what does it feel like to see this journey get to this point where you're like, all right, man, you've had a long journey. Like you've done a lot of things. Like it's almost like you're not the typical new artist. You know what I mean? But now here you are, like with a new lease on life, musically speaking. It's your first time as a solo artist having a song go out into the world, and you've seen God do these incredible things in your story. It's almost as like he's been writing this, and maybe it's been in a different tempo than you would have hoped. But for such a time as this, like, what does it feel like to see that new song come out?
I mean, it's a dream come true. Like, doing what I'm doing now, if you had told me when I was in the pit of my life, like that moment, like, hey, this is what your life's going to look like, 5 years down the road, I would have been like, you're crazy, you're insane. So for me, it's like the gratitude level is insane right now. It feels amazing to see that God would choose to let me keep doing this. But I chose to go after this artistry partially because I felt like I had a story that I wanted to share, and I feel like there's this saying, if your dreams don't outweigh your memories, you have no future. And I had gotten to do a bunch of stuff, and God had been really good, and I saw him start to pull me out of my place. So now it was kind of like, okay, now what, Peter? Are you going to go share that with the world? And are you willing to do that? And I was like, absolutely.
I love it.
If there's one thing I can do for people, it's I want to point them towards hope that they can have in Jesus. And anyone who's feeling like they're stuck or like they can't make it to the next thing, I want them to know, hey, I was there too, and you're going to make it.
That's
and so like,
amazing.
Where Would I Be is such a special song for it to be my first song out as my first new single, because it's my story, and it reminds me when I sing the song of all the things that I have. So one, it kind of terrifies me. Where would I be if I didn't have Jesus? Like, I don't even want to think about that. I don't want to go back there. But
Thank God.
I don't have to know. But not only that, I don't want to stop there. I want to go, okay, well now what do I have because I have Jesus? I've got new mercy every day. I've got grace. I've got a God fighting my battles. I've got a God who loves me more than I could ever comprehend. I have those, and I can never lose them.
Yeah.
And that is like, it fires me up when I sing the song. And so,
I love that.
That's exciting to me.
Before we close out, I want you to share the story of the guitar when people see you lead worship, or when you go on tour at some point in the future. Maybe you get to open for Matthew West someday. I don't know.
Hey, let's make it happen. Let's make it happen.
But I want you to tell the story of your guitar, because I think it's a powerful one.
Sure. So, I told Matthew this story a couple months ago. So I have this guitar, right? And it's a super old guitar. It was actually gifted to me at that church that I used to work at, where I was leading worship for the 100 high schoolers. Yeah. The worship pastor at that church had this guitar, and I couldn't afford a nice guitar. So he had this guitar hanging in his office, and every time I'd go play at the church, he would let me borrow it. And then he ended up moving on from the church, and when he left, he handed it to me. He said, "It's yours. You can keep it." And I was like, wow. I mean, that was really cool. So that guitar has been with me through everything that we've talked about, through all my touring years, through all my ups and downs, the amount of songs that have been written on that guitar, the amount that guitar has been tracked. I've taken it on missions trips. That thing has been dropped in the dirt. And then the guitar has actually been broken. Like the whole headstock of the guitar at one point broke off.
Cracked off, yeah.
And so the guy who had given me the guitar, we were talking about it, because when he gave it to me, he's like, this headstock, it was broken. And he was like, but don't worry. He said, the guitar is actually, it's stronger now than it was before. And I said,
how's that?
How's that possible? He said, because the glue and the bonding agent that's holding the guitar's neck on the body is a stronger source than the wood originally was. So the source that's holding it together is stronger than the original source. And right there in that moment, I felt like God said, "You are your guitar, Peter. You were so broken, but when you chose to let me be the source that holds your broken pieces together, you're now stronger than you were before." So every time I step on stage with that guitar, I have this guitar in my hands, and I look down and I can see the joint on the neck, right where it's glued together. Yeah. And God tells me, like, "This is you. You got this. Yeah. I'm holding you together."
The source that's holding us together.
And I truly feel that, man. Like, I feel like today I'm stronger mentally than I've ever been before. I've got my days, I've got my moments. I'm still, a broken human that's working towards being more like Jesus. I'm broken, but the broken pieces of me are held together by Jesus. And
that's awesome, man.
That's me. That's my story.
I'm excited. I wanted you to be on the show to share a bit of your story for people to get to know you. And guys, just last week, this song came out, and you have to go listen to Where Would I Be. It's the first of many songs that Peter's going to be putting out. Incredible stuff. I'm excited to see what God has in store for you, for your willingness to share your story, like authentically, honestly, the good, the bad, and the broken parts of our story. And I always tell people, like, sometimes the parts of our story that we think disqualify our stories from being of any good use to God are actually the parts where the light's going to break through, right? Those cracks in our story that we see as imperfection, right? Those are the moments where if we're willing to say, "God, you sure you could use this?" He's like, "That's the part that you've been holding on to. I want you to give that to me," and watch it be amazed. So you're doing that, and somebody's listening to this and being encouraged by it. And just want to encourage you guys today. Thank you for listening. Go check out Peter's music. It's Peter. What's your name again? Just kidding. Peter Burton on socials, though, on TikTok.
Yeah.
Is it just Peter Burton, right?
Peter Burton Music.
I should know this. I'm kind of your manager.
Yeah, you should know this.
But go look him up on Instagram and TikTok, anywhere you're on social media. He's putting out some incredibly encouraging content. The new song is called Where Would I Be? And today, so much to take away from this, but whatever it is you have gone through or are going through in your life, like, I want to encourage you to be reminded of that same story of his guitar, and be reminded of the source that is holding you together, and how just because you may be wounded or broken, we've all got some brokenness in our lives, that doesn't mean that we're forever weak. It means that we place those broken pieces in the hands of a healing Savior, we become stronger than ever before, but not strong in our own strength.
Yep.
Strong in a strength greater than our own.
Yeah.
And I hope that encourages you today. Thank you, Peter, for sharing
Of
that
course.
with us.
Thanks for having me,
And
man.
thanks for listening. Thanks to Peter Burton for joining me. And remember, it's your story for his glory. I'll see you next week.